Hello and welcome back to How Bored. I'm Christian and I'll be your host for this evening. And tonight we're going to cover how to set up and play Gazebo, a game designed by Reiner Knizia, published by Bitewing Games. Let's go ahead and get started without any further ado. So first things first, you're going to go ahead and grab the game, either the clamshell travel case or the box, whichever version you have and are using, and we're going to go ahead and open that up to start getting our pieces here. Go ahead and grab out the cloth playmat and choose which side you want to play on. If you have the elevation expansion, you can choose from that as well. For this video, we are going to be just using the base version of the game, and we are going to be playing on the tan side of the playmat. So we'll go ahead and get that into the center of the table, and we're going to hand each player their player color of gazebos between blue, yellow/green, orange, and then a magenta. Depending on how many players you have is going to dictate how many gazebos each player is going to get. At 2 players, they are going to get all of their color of gazebos. At 3 players, each player is going to remove 5 of their gazebos for a total of 19 in their pool, and at 4 players, each player is only going to have 15 gazebos, taking out 9 from their pile. Once players have gathered their appropriate amount of gazebos, just have that in front of them, ready to play. Now, go ahead and grab your double colored tile dominoes. These are going to be the ones that are 2 of the same color squares on each one. Go ahead and pull those out and make a reserve, which you're going to do by placing them all face down, giving them a good shuffle, and then placing them into easy-to-grab stacks. If you are playing with the acrylic tiles, I recommend not going taller than 5 high, as they will get a little bit slippery and not want to stay in their piles. So let's go ahead and get that part done really quick. Alright, so our reserve of those tiles has been made above the board there, a little bit off camera, I apologize for that, and hand each player a stack of 5 of these tiles, and you will notice that they are just a little bit different than the base tiles. If comparing them side by side, the base tiles are a little bit lighter and the special ones are just a little bit darker. So if you're ever confused about which ones are which, look for the darker background. Those are going to be your double color tiles. So, like I said, we'll give each player a stack of 5 of these special tiles. Do not look at them yet. These are draw piles for during the game, but you will not know what they are ahead of time. They will be completely random to each player. Next, go ahead and grab your common supply of other dominoes if you're not using any sort of colored bag or something that you can't see through to draw out of. Then create stacks just like you did for the special tiles previously, shuffling them and placing them face down as well. If you have some sort of draw bag, feel free to use that as well. Just something that will keep the information of these tiles hidden while players draw from them. And once that has been taken care of, go ahead and hand 3 dominoes face down to each player. These ones the players may look at. That is going to be their current hand, and you will always have 3 dominoes in your hand at the end of your turn. And that is essentially setup complete. Players have gotten their set number of gazebos, they've gotten their stacks of these special tiles, and they have drawn their hand of 3 basic tiles. With your board being set up, you are ready to play. Determine the first player however you wish. As denoted by the rulebook, the last person to sit outside in the shade is the first player, but you can also use your own method as well. So for gameplay, how are you going to play Gazebo? First off, what is the goal of Gazebo? How are you going to win? You are going to win by being the first to empty out all of your gazebos, or if you end up running out of dominoes, then whoever has the least remaining in their pile is the winner of the game. And the way that you're going to be getting rid of these gazebos is by creating what's called nooks. A nook is any set or collection of 2 or more of the same color. So, for example, in this hand, I have domino tiles that are 2 blue and pink tiles, and then 1 that is a blue and a green tile. When I'm placing these on the board, I'm going to place them adjacent to a color square that is already out there. Note that these butterfly spaces and these vase spaces are not actually squares that you can place adjacent to at the start of the game. You have to build there through placing dominoes. These other spots are special effects that we will cover here in a little bit. So for placing the first tile of the game, there is a blue square here, a green square here, and a pink square here. These are going to be located in different spots on each side of this board, as well as the elevation expansion, but for this side, that is where they are. And that means that those count as squares like on a domino, and you can place next to them. For example, if I take this blue and pink tile here, I can take the pink side and place it adjacent next to this pink square up here. You cannot cover it, you can only place adjacent to it. Any spot that has a full square icon you can only place next to, you cannot cover. So in this example again, if I place the pink and blue tile right next to this with the two pinks orthogonally adjacent to each other, that would create a nook. And now I would go into my supply and I would be able to pull out a gazebo and put it on there to show that I control that pink nook. Now, this nook will only ever have one gazebo on it until I get 5 or more pinks in that spot. And that's going to happen by just continuously placing more tiles. If I got to 5 pinks in a row, that would become what is called a big nook. And I would be able to stack a second gazebo on the one I already have there, making a double stacked gazebo that would then protect that spot, because there is an absorbing mechanic in this, but we'll cover that here in a little bit. But in this setup right here, example, I'm only at 3 pinks still, but now I have 2 blues touching each other, so that becomes its own nook as well that I also now control and get to put another gazebo on. Now, these spaces here are special. The vase spaces are ways to get extra actions. So when you place next to it and you have a nook that touches this space for the first time, you get to take an extra placement action before drawing. At the end of every one of your turns, you're going to draw back up to your hand size. The lowest you'll ever get to is 1 domino left in hand, because you are only allowed to take a vase action once per turn. You can't chain and be able to get like all 4 of them. You can only ever get 1 per turn, but it will give you an extra action. So say I placed that blue and pink tile there, set up that nook that now connects to that vase, I can take another action and maybe I'll keep extending my pink up here, which is now at 4, so it's 1 away from getting that big nook that I explained before. Now, at the end of my turn, I have 1 domino left in my hand, and I will go ahead and draw 2 more to get back up to my hand size. The other square space option that we have here is this butterfly space, and that is an extra opportunity to get rid of more gazebos. These are referred to as patios, and when you connect a nook to those for the first time, if you're the only one touching it, you get to place an extra gazebo there. Now, these are where the area control comes in, because whoever has the most gazebos touching this patio space will control that. So if I have the 1 gazebo there, and say my opponent later comes in and they end up having 2 gazebos touching it, let's just kind of shortcut, for example, and say that this green spot right here was actually a big nook, which puts 2 gazebos onto there. Well, now they have more gazebos than I do, so they would kick mine off back to my supply, and they would gain control of that space, putting an extra gazebo there. Now, if I went and got a second gazebo connected here, say I got this pink set up into a big nook so that now I have a double gazebo there, I do not regain control of that patio because I have to exceed what is there. So I would have to get a 3rd gazebo connected to that patio to then be able to take control over it again. So there's a little element of area control there and ways for gazebos to come back into your supply to slow you down while also helping your opponent speed up. The last unique space on this board is going to be these domino spaces here, which you'll notice are not squares. They are just icons in the middle of a square, which means you can and have to cover them to get their effect. Now, when you cover one of these spaces, that will allow you to draw one of these special domino tiles from the general supply rather than your personal reserve, which we'll get into here in a second. So whenever you cover one of those icons, you get to, at the end of your turn, draw from that stack and get one of the 3 double colored tiles, whether it be 2 blues, 2 pinks, or 2 greens. These count as instant nooks or are great ways to extend existing nooks into big nooks. A lot of nooks going on here, but that's the name of the game. Create nooks to plant gazebos. All right, so that's the core of the board, and then at the end of your turn, when it comes to your draw step, again, if you covered one of those rectangles on the board there, one of the domino spaces, you'll get to draw one of the special domino tiles. However, if you did not, you will be drawing back up to your hand size of 3, and you have 2 choices. You can either draw from the general supply of the main tiles here, of the 2 different colored tiles, or you can draw from your face down reserve, getting more of those special tiles directly into your hand. And once you make the choice, you obviously can't undo it. And if you are drawing 2 tiles for the turn because you planted next to a vase, then you will get to choose both times whether you want. You can take 1 from the reserve, 1 from the bag, or 2 of one of them. You don't have to draw from your reserve. You can leave those through the end of the game if you wish, because you only have 5 and your reserve will never refill. The only way after emptying your reserve to get more of those tiles is by covering those spaces on the board. And again, the whole name of the game is just getting rid of your gazebos by creating as many nooks as possible, not covering these spaces that actually have these squares on them, but covering the ones that just have the icons and nothing else. As you're battling and conquesting over this board and emptying your gazebos, again, the first person to get rid of all of their gazebos is the winner. If it comes down to running out of tiles, which is very rare, whoever has the least gazebos left at that point is then the winner. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at the other side and cover just a couple of different changes from this side of the board. It's very minimal though. All right, so on the other side of the board here, you'll notice that there are no longer the vase spaces. They are now taken over by fancy patios, which work exactly the same as normal patios, except instead of just putting a single gazebo on it when you have control, you now get a double gazebo. So they're much more valuable to control, but you'll see there's much more area around them to be able to fight for control over them. And then also as well, you'll notice the color spaces are in the corners of the board rather than stretched along the middle diagonal. You still have these spaces to cover up and get these special tiles, but otherwise this is just a battle for patios. There are no vases to get extra turns in this one. It's just 1 tile a turn, plain and simple. And now I suppose is probably as good as time as any to cover that unique rule I was talking about earlier, the absorbing. And this is the most convoluted rule in this entire game, and it's very easy for people to get confused with, so bear with me as I try to explain this. So the absorption rule matters when 2 players have competing nooks of the same color coming up against each other, and when they would connect, how that would happen. So we have this setup here. My opponent and I each have a pink nook of size 2, 1 space away from each other, with just 1 little spot between them. So we're going to cover how this situation is going to happen here. So the absorption rule will state that a greater sized nook can absorb a smaller nook, kicking gazebos off and creating a big nook. So in this setup here, say I had a pink nook of size 3 versus my opponent's size nook of 2. I could then take a tile with a pink on it and put it between the 2, which would then kick my opponent's gazebo off. So now I have full control of this nook, and it would become a big nook. So then I can get a gazebo on myself. So that is another way to kick players' pieces off of the board and back into their supply, is by absorbing their nooks. Now, it is important to note that only small nooks can be absorbed. Once you create a big nook, that is completely safe. It cannot be absorbed by any other player, no matter the size of the nook that is attaching to it. So now going back to this original example here, saying we each have a size 2 nook, I and my opponent would not be able to place a pink space in here, and that is because 1 nook has to be greater than the other before connecting. Yes, putting this tile here could theoretically make my nook a size 3, but it would also simultaneously make my opponent's nook a size 3, meaning that they are completely even in battle and neither one would come out the victor. So this is an illegal play and cannot happen. Now I can flip this tile around so that the pinks don't connect, and then there's no problem whatsoever. There's no more competition. Each player keeps their nook. The big problem here is that my opponent could just go and throw a pink on the other side and then on a later turn come and connect it here. But 2 nooks of equal size before the tile is added cannot be connected. That is an illegal play and would not work. There has to be a tiebreaker before the tile is placed. And it's such a hard rule sometimes because you might look at this and say, well, I'm the one placing the tile, so I should have control of it. It does not work that way. It is a completely neutral tile until it is controlled by a gazebo. So in this case, this would not be able to happen. Again, I would have to make my nook bigger before I could then connect it and absorb my opponent's. It is also important to note with the absorption rule that a big nook can continuously absorb other nooks, but it will not add more gazebos. The most any nook can have is 2 gazebos on a big nook of 5 or more of the same color all touching each other. And that pretty much does it for Gazebo. That is how to play and how to win. Thank you so much for joining me today, and please feel free to check out my review on this game releasing alongside of this video. Now that you know how to play it, you can go get my thoughts on it and see overall if this is actually something that you would be interested in having and playing. If not, that is totally fine. At least you got to come check it out and know for sure. But that is all I got for you today. Thank you guys so much for joining me as always. If you enjoy the content and find it helpful, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe down below. I sincerely appreciate it. I'm just doing this as a hobby, so it's no stress whatsoever. But thank you all again so much for joining. I'll see you in the next one. And as always, happy gaming.